Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Samantha.
And I'm Thomas.
And this is Trans IRL.
We have a great show for you tonight. We'll be talking about dating, what it's like when you're trans and when you're dating someone who's cisgender, and what it's like when you're dating someone who's also trans. How to come out to who you're dating and when to come out to who you're dating. We're talking about all of it.
Now, full disclosure, this is a topic that Thomas and I really don't have any personal experience with. We both came out and transitioned while we were already in a marriage. So while we certainly did our share of dating prior to that, we've never dated as out trans individuals.
That's why we're so interested to hear what our guests, Dakota Pierce and Blair Cherelstein, have to say. You might know the trans power couple as Becoming Dakota and Blurcher on Instagram. Tonight, they'll be talking about their past experiences dating and what their relationship with each other is like now.
But first, we begin with a look at transgender headlines in the news. It's June, and that means that it's Pride Month. In many cities across the world, members of the LGBT community will come together to celebrate sexual and gender diversity with events like festivals, parades, rallies, and more.
Pride came about after the Stonewall riots of 1969 in New York City. If you're unfamiliar with the story, the short version is there was a gay bar that police raided and riots broke out, and it turned into quite the ordeal. 1 year after the riots, the first Pride was held, and now we celebrate Pride every year in June. Well, almost everyone celebrates in June.
Yeah, here in Phoenix, Pride is actually held in April because it's a lot cooler then than it is this time of year. So these are some pictures of me in Phoenix Pride this year. This is actually a photo of me with Monica Helms, who is the trans woman who created the transgender pride flag.
And in Oakland, California, where I'm at, we actually celebrate Pride in September to avoid the San Francisco Pride crowd. This is a photo of me and my husband, Sam, at Oakland Pride last year. And in San Francisco, the Pride festivities will take place here at the end of the month.
And in Santa Monica, where our executive producer and director, Addison, lives, the city is celebrating Pride Month for the very first time. The world-famous 3rd Street Promenade, Santa Monica Place, and Santa Monica Pier will be lit up in Pride colors all month long.
There's also the larger LA Pride Festival, which takes place in West Hollywood every year. That's happening this weekend. Now, these are just some of the celebrations happening near us. There are many other festivities happening all around the world.
Yeah, we mentioned the Stonewall riots earlier, which was such a pivotal moment in the gay civil rights movement. Well, today there was an interesting development.
During a safety briefing, the New York Police Department apologized for its actions for the first time. The NYPD Commissioner, James O'Neill, said this. Take a listen.
I think it would be irresponsible of me as we go through World Pride Month not to speak of the events at the Stonewall Inn in June of 1969. Well, I'm certainly not going to stand up here and pretend to be an expert on what happened at Stonewall. I do know what happened should not have happened. The actions taken by the NYPD were wrong, plain and simple. The actions and the laws were discriminatory and oppressive, and for that, I apologize.
The apology was long awaited. June 29th will mark 50 years since the Stonewall riots. This all comes as New York City plays host to the World Pride event this year.
Yeah, in Dallas, it was a somber start to Pride Month after the murder of yet another trans woman of color. 26-year-old Chanel Lindsay's body was pulled from White Rock Lake Saturday evening. Police said she was found floating in the water with obvious signs of, quote, homicidal violence. Lindsay is the third transgender woman of color to be killed in Dallas since October. Another transgender woman was also stabbed in April, but she survived. Police say they're investigating similarities between these 4 cases and that they've now called in the FBI for help.
Meanwhile, in El Paso, Texas, a transgender woman who was seeking asylum in the U.S. died Saturday, just days after being released by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Now, advocacy groups are once again raising alarms about the treatment of LGBT migrants in ICE custody. 25-year-old Johanna Medina Leon was being held in Otero County Processing Center, a private detention center in New Mexico. Leon was a certified nurse from El Salvador who was detained in mid-April after crossing the border. While at Otero County Processing Center, she reportedly fell ill and on numerous occasions pleaded with ICE for medical attention. That's according to the advocacy group Diversidad Sin Fronteras. Leon was eventually released and taken to Del Sol Medical Center, where she later died. Her cause of death is unknown. Otero County Processing Center has been criticized for how it treats LGBT migrants. This all comes almost 1 year to the day after the death of Roxana Hernandez Rodriguez, a transgender woman and migrant from Honduras.
On Friday, President Trump became the first Republican president to recognize Pride Month through what else but a tweet. Trump wrote, "As we celebrate LGBT Pride Month and recognize the outstanding contributions LGBT people have made to our great nation, let us also stand in solidarity with many LGBT people who live in dozens of countries worldwide that punish, imprison, or even execute individuals on the basis of their sexual orientation. My administration has launched a global campaign to decriminalize homosexuality and invite all nations to join us in this effort." People on Twitter were quick to point out that the president's administration has banned transgender people from serving in the military, has withdrawn federal protections for trans students, proposed defining transgender people out of existence, proposed rolling back protections for trans individuals in healthcare, and proposed rolling back protections for trans individuals who are homeless. And that him saying that he stands in solidarity with the LGBT community doesn't really check out. In an interview with Piers Morgan, Trump was asked about this. We have a clip. It's a little long, but let's take a look.
This week you tweeted your support for the LGBT community around the world where they're being persecuted or excluded.
It's terrible.
Which does prompt the obvious question. If you feel that protective of the LGBT community, why did you feel the need to ban transgender people from serving in the US military?
Because they take massive amounts of drugs. They have to. And also, and you're not allowed to take drugs. You know, in the military, you're not allowed to take any drugs. You take an aspirin. And they have to. After the operation, they have to. They have no choice. They have to. And you would actually have to break rules and regulations in order to have that.
But the cost of the medication is minuscule compared to the overall budget, right?
You
accept that. The US military spends a lot more money, for example, on giving Viagra to service men and women, or service men.
I didn't know they did
than it does actually on medical bills for transgender people. Yeah. And so it just seems to me an unnecessary thing for a guy who wants to be supportive of LGBT rights and the community around the world, that you've taken this action.
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah, according to the Washington Post, the Department of Defense has disputed Trump's claims. They say military service men and women can take prescription medications, including hormones. In fact, hormones are often prescribed to cisgender servicemen and women with other health conditions. Now that we have covered all the recent news, on to tonight's guests.
Tonight's guests are a couple. They've been dating for 1.5 years and are well-known influencers in the online transgender community. We are so excited to welcome Blair and Dakota to the show. Hey, guys.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, thank you both for joining us tonight. It's rare for our show to have 2 guests in one episode, but your story is important, and it's also really cute to have you wear one set of headphones together. So we definitely wanted to make that happen. Dating and relationships is a topic that is so often discussed in the trans community, so we're really excited to chat with you both.
Yeah, thank you both for being here. It'd be really great if you could each start off by giving the viewers a little bit of a self-introduction. Blair, would you like to start, and then we'll jump over to Dakota?
Yeah, sure. My name's Blair Cherelstein. I am 24 years old. I am living in Maryland. I work at a Ulta Beauty, and I have a lovely cat named Chicken.
All right, so you have a cat named Chicken. Thomas has a cat named Milkshake. All these great cat names. I don't know. All right, and Dakota, let's hear a little bit about you as well.
My name is Dakota. I'm 26. I also live in Maryland. I'm from Indiana, so I had a little bit of a trek to get out here. And Chicken is actually my cat, but Blair's a great mom, so.
I do love Chicken. Chicken is very cute. I have a second cat named Buttons, and Chicken and Buttons could be like long lost family members. They look very much alike. So yeah, just a fun fact for the viewers. So let's jump in a little deeper and start off maybe by talking about each of your backstories. Specifically, you know, what was coming out like for each of you, and what did your relationships, if any, that you had look like at the time? So maybe Dakota, do you want to jump into it first?
Yeah, I won't spend too much time on mine because my story is a little sad. But coming out, I've had 2 coming out stories, I guess. But the most recent one, when I came out as transmasculine, was July of 2017. So we're coming up on 2 years. And yeah, there's a picture. That's crazy. So my parents did not appreciate me coming out, so I do not speak to my parents. But my younger sister, Kyla, actually helped me pick my name, and my good friend Shelby. So as far as relationships are concerned, my family kind of fell to the wayside. But all my close friends around me, my professors, oh yeah, here's before and after I cut my hair. This was a huge deal. This is the first time I cut my hair and coming into my true identity. My friends were incredible. They took to my name right away, took to my pronouns right away, and were really protective and really champions for the early stages of my transition. So that's a little bit about me, I guess, and my story. It's really sad. I don't want to keep talking about it.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I want you to be able to say, you know, whatever you're comfortable with. And I think, you know, and in as much as we're comfortable, it is important to recognize that often, you know, our stories can involve a lot of sadness, and it can be really difficult, but really real to have to go through that. And, you know, I think a lot of us have experienced people, you know, falling out of our lives because of transition, and it can be really difficult to go through. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you just kind of spoke to it in your own way and gave it your own words. And we don't want to put you in a position where you go into something that you don't want to go into. So that's great. So Blair, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I came out when I was 17 years old, 16 or 17 years old. I came out in my high school. I didn't really have much of like a dating life before, or like, especially not, sorry, that chicken's like freaking out behind us. But I'd never really had too much of a dating life before, or at the like beginning stages of my transition. So I didn't really have to experience that. But when I came out, my family was super accepting. I haven't had any family members not accept me, at least like not to my face. I've had a few peers of mine react not so greatly, but for the most part, it was a pretty warm welcome when I came out. Nobody was really too surprised, so I think it wasn't really like that much of a shock when I came out.
So we definitely want to get to when and where you both met in just a moment. But before we do that, I'd like to talk a little bit about your experiences dating before you met each other. And Blair, you kind of touched on a little bit dating before you transitioned or early in transition, but do you have any other stories or experiences to share before you met Dakota?
Oh yeah, I've dated a lot of different people. I don't really like to label my sexuality, so I've dated all different like personalities, all different genders. Like I've had girlfriends, boyfriends, partners. I haven't had really too many poor experiences. There's really only been one relationship that wasn't the absolute greatest, but being trans was never an issue with the people that I dated. Maybe like when I attempted to try to date people, it might have been an issue at those moments, but usually the people that I was like trying to be with were already aware of it and really accepting.
All right. And Dakota, your experiences?
Oh, I dated not very much before I started transitioning. I have been engaged twice, once to a man before I came out as gay, and then once to a woman when I was out as gay and presenting as female. And so third time's a charm. Where we're but outside of Blair, I've dated a lot of. Blair's the first trans person that I've ever dated, and before, like when I came out, like early on when I came out, it seemed to be really confusing to the people that I was seeing. They didn't seem to really understand. It was kind of like, oh, well, you're the best of both worlds sort of situation, which was really uncomfortable. And then, so I kind of gave up on dating, and then that's when I met Blair.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you both met. I mean, are we talking like love at first sight, like, oh my God, wow, or like, do you feel like it was a slower walk to dating for you two?
I definitely thought that he was super cute, and we had a similar taste in music, and so there were a lot of reasons for me to reach out to him and get to know him better. I don't know if I necessarily believe in love at first sight. I definitely believe in love as a concept, of course. But I definitely am the type of person that I need to get to know somebody before I can say that I love them. But I mean, he started off pretty well.
Yeah. Is that all you're gonna say?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dakota, were you living in Indiana at the time? Did you guys meet online?
Yeah.
Yes, through Instagram actually.
Okay.
So Blair was Flaunt's Flaunt Streetwear's partner at the time, and I had been following Flaunt through a friend and on Instagram, and they posted a picture of Blair, and I immediately stopped and I was like, oh my God, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life. And so I like clicked on her page and was kind of scrolling through and being like, oh my God, she's so like funny and she's so beautiful. And this whole time while I'm freaking out, she had followed me back. And so then I was really freaking out. I was living with three of my best friends at the time, and I ran into the living room and I was like, oh my God, you have to see this girl. And they're like, oh my God, wow, she's so pretty. And as I was freaking out, she sent me a message, and I fell to the floor. I just collapsed. I was like, this is not happening to me. I'm a nobody from Indiana, and here's this super popular girl on Instagram, like, in my DMs. It was wild. It was absolutely wild.
I'm over here like beaming, like, oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Sorry, I'm like totally.
My face
So
hurts from
sweet.
smiling.
Wow. So, Thomas and I both talked about this earlier in the episode here. We transition in relationships with cis partners. So I'm wondering what you both view as unique about your situation, if anything, about being in a relationship with another trans person.
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that we don't really have to like explain to each other. Like we can kind of just like know that the other one gets it without having to say it in so many words. Sometimes I feel like with cis people, and I mean, it's no fault to them, but sometimes you have to like kind of play catch up with what information is like out there. And so dating a trans person, it's really nice to kind of have that like similar communication, like that similar kind of like language that like our community has, if that makes sense.
I think it does. There's a lot of explaining you have to do to somebody who's really not up to speed. So to be able to skip over all of that and to have that shared background and shared history, I could definitely see that being an advantage in their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So on that same kind of note there, are there any other hidden benefits or maybe unseen complications that people who don't hold this experience might not be aware of?
That's a loaded question. I think in the same hand that we share the same language, so that's really helpful. Our experiences are still very different. I'm still very early in my transition, whereas Blair has been going about her transition for a few years now. I am still struggling with, not necessarily struggling, but I'm still dealing with who I am as a person and what that looks like, as it concerns my sexuality, my gender identity, my gender expression, and Blair has been absolutely phenomenal in being my number one supporter, and both my rock and my sunshine and my rainstorms. Like, she has been everything that I've needed and didn't expect to have in a partner. But at the same time, because our stories are so different, like, there are times when I am not going to understand what Blair is going through, regardless of the fact that we share the same language. And there are times that she's not going to understand what I go through. The way we take our hormones is different, and that sometimes plays a big deal in our relationship. Both of us have kind of opposite experiences when it comes to our coming out story and our backstory and why we do the things that we do. And so while it's really great to have somebody who understands, it's also very, I mean, we have the same struggles that cis couples have. There are always going to be concerns. Like, we're always stressed out about this thing and that thing. And so nothing is really shocking, but I guess I didn't understand or didn't expect to have to take so much time to learn somebody. I think my understanding of what love has always been really skewed. And so Blair has done a really good job of kind of like helping me unlearn that, which I think everybody deserves. Somebody who can walk through them side by side, and kind of unlearn and relearn the hard things and the good things and the ugly things and the beautiful things. That was a lot.
That was perfect, though.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that was beautiful. I'm like, man, that sounds very familiar. I mean, like, in my own relationship, it's a lot of hard work, and it's good work, and we love each other. And there are ways in which, Sam, my husband, knows me. He's known me for a long time, but there are other ways in which, I'm going through something that may be pretty specific to my transness that takes a lot of extra communicating to get him to understand. But at the end of the day, like, the foundation of the, continuation of our relationship and our love, like, rests on this communication and how we do that and how successful we are at that and aren't at that sometimes. And I really resonated, Dakota, when you were talking about, being early on in your transition. You and I are like pretty close to like similar timelines, I feel like, on when we came out, because I came out maybe just a couple years ago. And this whole idea of like, I was working so hard to embrace my gender, and then I was like, oh shit, my sexuality, like, what do I do with this? And like, I was like, oh no, like, now I have to do this too. And it was just like, and there are still things that I'm processing and how to be with a partner, and what's going to feel comfortable and not comfortable, and how do you do all of that communicating while, still interacting or like being sexy and being like, I don't know if this is gonna work. It's like so much talking, and I'm like, where's the spontaneity? I can't be spontaneous anymore. I have to walk through like 10 steps before I get there. Anyway, yeah. It's good to know you feel similarly. So I did want to ask, you both are active influencers on social media. I think we can say that. And I'm wondering how aspects of social media play into your relationship. I mean, do you feel the presence or maybe pressure of it, or is the value of the community what's most important? Is it a little bit of both? How do you balance social media and your relationship?
I never feel like too much pressure from social media on our relationship, maybe more individually. But I never feel like I need to do something or need to like show a certain like image of us on social media. I like to kind of like be natural with Dakota, and so I like to like show that as well. Um, it's easier with Dakota because he does a good job of like making me feel confident about myself, and I hope vice versa. And So I think it's more about like individually is when I face some like inner struggle about social media.
I would have to say no. I don't think personally, yeah, I feel some sort of pressure to like perform for my audience. But at the same time, I've tried to build my brand on being like authentic and genuine, as far as like sharing the struggles and sharing like the everyday experiences of being trans. Just because I happen to be somebody who doesn't fit a lot of the stereotypes of what I see other trans masculine people looking like, and so I like to share that with my audience. But I still feel this pressure to be like, oh, I have to get the right picture sometimes, or like I have to say the right thing. Um, and but as far as us, I don't really feel any sort of pressure. Like nobody is coming after us, which is nice. But Instagram is how we met, and so I kind of owe Instagram a lot. I owe Flaunt a lot, to just giving us a platform to interact. And then eventually I moved out here, so that was pretty cool. I just want to make it perfectly clear that Blair slid into my DMs first. I think that's really important to understand.
But it is interesting with the Instagram exposure. You know, I didn't expect my page to be nearly as interesting or as out there as it's turned into. And my big thing is always trying to make sure that I do present a very realistic view of what I'm going through in my life. And it's very easy to present, a picture of that everything is perfect all the time online and in social media. You can create that persona. But I think especially for those of us going through this trans experience, it's important to capture some of those moments, those difficulties as well, and bring them forward. And I do strive to do that. As for its impact on my actual relationship, I think that as my page grew, something I did have to work on was making sure that I was balancing time I was spending on Instagram versus not on Instagram. And that took a while to lock in. I'm not perfect at it. I'm not going to lie, but it's something I'm aware of, and it's something that I was working and continue to work towards to make sure that I do balance time appropriately in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that too. I mean, like Sam, I don't know if any of you follow Sam on Instagram, but he only follows me and he has no posts. And it's just so I can tag him. He's very, very proud of his followers to following ratio. It's a whole conversation in our household. But he is not a social media like guy. He just doesn't really like it. So it's like we're always I'm negotiating always. I'm like, okay, I kind of want to take a picture of us because it'll be really cute or like something like that. But so we have to have lots of conversations about, balancing what I view as maybe my needs or what I want to see or talk about on my page, and his needs as well, and his own privacy and what he wants to share or not share. And so this is kind of always this balance that's going on in our household, and I'm often a little too stubborn, and I'll probably watch this later and be like you're very stubborn, but I love him and he loves me, and it is an ongoing thing. Yes, it's hard.
That's really funny that you say that, because I feel like it's definitely like I'm really bad at being on my social media and like posting on my social media. I don't know. I don't really like interact too much, and I know that like I probably should more. But Dakota always wants to take a fun little selfie, and like I'm the one that's more like I don't know, like not right now, maybe another time or something like that. It's a funny dynamic.
It is funny. And there's nothing you should do with your account.
All right. So dysphoria is something that many trans people experience. And in your case, I'm wondering, how do you both try to support each other when times get difficult?
I think it's really important that when one of us is feeling dysphoric, that we first off try our best to like not let it affect our dysphoria, which is like tough, and it's also like understandable if one of us is feeling dysphoric and we talk about like how we're dysphoric, like it can sometimes make the other person a little dysphoric as well, just because it gets them in that mindset. It's like kind of that energy that's around. So sometimes what I find what's best for us is like a little bit of space apart can sometimes be really helpful. Like if we just have some space to like breathe and think, and then we can come back and see what like the best way to help and like the best way to be constructive is. Because I know sometimes when I'm really feeling it, I don't really have like a solution. I don't really have anything that's going to make me feel better in that moment. And so like I don't want to then like take it out on Dakota. I don't want it to like I don't want to I think it's just better if we can like kind of process our thoughts and then come back to each other.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I think that taking that measured response, you know, and like trying to be that way about it is really interesting. And it's not exact. I mean, the way that you described it, I think is interesting. It's not something I'd fully thought about in that way when you said, you know, not letting your own dysphoria and that energy of it, that often negative energy of it, impact the other person. I don't think I'd really thought about how that could be true. And I'm thinking just, you know, in my own life, like I'm married to a cisgender man, but just the negative energy of it all can, you know, give off this aura that can affect the people around you. And, you know, Sam's cisgender, so he's not going to maybe react to that the same way that, say, if it were you, Blair, and Dakota, but like it can affect his mood and how we interact together.
Yeah, and we're definitely both people that play off each other's feelings and like emotions. So it can sometimes like just happen like on accident, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to ask, and we're going to get to some more advice-y questions in the viewer questions, I'm sure, but do you have any advice you would want to give to other trans folks who are out there now, you know, sort of navigating this dating world? Is there any words of wisdom or things that you think people could be aware of?
Patience. Patience is literally key. There's just a lot of people that don't really get it and don't really do a good job of beating around that bush, if that makes sense. Some people I feel are very blunt and in a very hurtful way. And I don't know about everyone else's experiences, but in my experiences, people can just be very crude and rude if they don't fully get it. And that can be hard to deal with. So my best advice is patience.
That's really smart. It's really smart. But I would also say like being happy with yourself first is going to help so much when you find somebody or somebodies that you want to spend your time with. I know before I started transitioning, like I had mentioned before, I was having a hard time with like people taking me seriously as transmasculine because I was pre-testosterone and I was pre-op, and so like because I didn't have the body that most people associated with being masculine, I feel like it was hard for them to kind of conceptualize that I was indeed a man, and it didn't matter what body I had or have. And So once I kind of was like, okay, I am not going to actively seek anybody out right now. I'm just going to focus on myself. I had started finally taking testosterone and dressing the way that I wanted to, presenting the way that I wanted to. And that's when I just happened to be on Instagram. So like, and the more I am comfortable with myself, I can feel the way that it shifts my relationship with Blair, because the more I accept myself, the easier it is to accept somebody else and to allow them to accept me as well. And so just being true to yourself is probably going to be the most important, that I think.
Good responses from both of you. So we do have some viewer questions we want to get to. So if you are watching us live on YouTube or Facebook and you have any questions for Blair, Dakota, Thomas, or myself, put them in the chat and we'll try to answer as many of those as we can. But first, we're going to start by taking a look at the questions that were submitted earlier this week through Instagram. The first one is, prior to your relationship, did you ever think that you'd be dating another trans person? Or was it important to each of you that your partner be trans too?
I didn't really like have a preference. I wasn't necessarily looking for a trans person or a cis person. I was just kind of looking for a person, or just kind of seeing what was out there. And it just so happened that I found a really great trans man. But it never felt like it was an end-all be-all thing, or it never felt like it was a must for when I was looking to be with somebody.
And I will just be completely honest. I never thought that I would date another trans person. I think a lot of that had to do with a lot of internalized transphobia and just knowing that I hated is a strong word. Knowing that I didn't like so many things about myself, the idea of being with somebody who maybe felt the same way seemed really overbearing. But instead, I found somebody who's super confident and sassy and silly and absolutely radiant. So it lucked out.
You two are so cute. Oh my god. This is adorable. All right, to our next question. Let's see. When is the best time to disclose that you're transgender to someone who you're dating or might date?
Think of first.
Okay. I don't really believe there's ever like a right time per se. I believe that it's important to kind of make sure that a few things are in place before you come out to somebody. One, you want to make sure that you are safe first and foremost. Two, you want to make sure that like you are like, well, I guess safe is like the biggest. This is encompassing a lot of things. Like make sure that you know where you're at. Like make sure you know you have a support system. Make sure you know that you can trust this person, or that you've spent some time with this person. There's no really like right time or right place to do this. It all comes down to you. Thankfully, like I was already out and I was very open about being out. But I find myself now like in the professional world, having to out myself a little bit more each time in order to make sure that I'm safe in the workplace. So that's a different type of relationship, but I still think that it applies.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I don't think there's like one set time that is like the most sense for everybody. I think it really depends person to person. I know in my experiences, like if on dating apps or something like that, I've varied between having it in my bio to getting to know somebody a little bit more before I told them. I would always let someone know before I met them in person if I was meeting them online, just because I wanted, like Dakota said, like safety was like one of my number one priorities. But yeah, I definitely think it depends, not only just person by person, but like relationship by relationship, really.
All right, on to our next question here. How did you constructively work through the times when there were hurt or angry feelings?
Well, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but like definitely taking time for ourselves, and then coming back to the situation can help. Even if it's like just one of us taking a drive or just stepping out on the deck or something like that, just to like get some space can definitely be really helpful. I also think one of the things that can help is when we are aware of our tones when speaking to each other, because sometimes we'll be like raising our voices at each other and we'll be like, wait a second, like, why are we doing this? This seems like it's making the whole thing much worse. And so we're both like, okay, we'll like be aware that we need to like just speak to each other in like regular talking tones. And I mean, the situation usually gets resolved instantaneously when we do that. It's just like, it's honestly, I think we both get, like I said, we both play off each other's emotions and feelings. And so like, if one of us is kind of like raising our voice a little bit, then the other one kind of feels like they need to as well. So just being like cognizant of that can definitely really help.
I don't disagree with you. I also think that it's really important that communication, we've talked about this a lot already, communication is key. And Blair and I try to make it a point to never go to bed angry. Whatever is bothering us, whether it's with each other, work, or work, we always try to make sure that we spend some time before bed to kind of like debrief and be like, okay, like, I'm really sorry that I made you feel this way, or we both are kind of like acts of service people. So if I know Blair's having a really hard time and she doesn't want to talk about it, I know that I can give her a foot rub and it's going to help kind of absolve whatever feeling she has. Or
Speaking of.
yeah, right. Yeah. And Blair does the same thing for me, but with usually a back rub instead. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, you know, knowing how you like give love, but also how your partner wants to receive love can be really helpful, because I know like Sam is often not much of a talker. But, you know, if I can do something for him, like you're saying, like some act of service or something, I wouldn't rub his feet because they are like always really sweaty and I just can't do that at all. But I'm so glad he's not here right now, because he would be really, I'm just talking about him all night. But yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Knowing how to show love and what your partner likes to receive, I think can be really valuable. So let's go to our next viewer question. And this one is, are there any dating websites or apps you recommend for LGBT people?
No. They're all trash, and they all really do not do a good job of supporting the trans people that use their apps. So yeah, I mean, you can definitely find a needle in a haystack. Is that the expression?
Yeah.
Yeah, but for the most part, I mean, like I know a lot of trans women have gotten their accounts suspended on Tinder because people reported it. So I don't know if there's really one specific spot that I think is like super friendly to LGBT people. I mean, Dakota and I met on Instagram, so maybe Instagram, slide in people's DMs. That would probably be the best place to do it.
Yeah,
That's good.
I think that's a good answer.
A whole bunch of people are going to be getting DMs tonight. All right. Those were all the pre-submitted questions we had through Instagram, but we do have a couple other questions that were put through the live chat here tonight. So I wanted to get to the first one. This is actually for all of us here. This was submitted by someone who's trans feminine and 10 months on HRT. They want to know, does transitioning get any easier? So let's start with Blair and Dakota.
I definitely think it gets easier. I think there is some parts of it that is more of a lateral movement. But I do think for the most part, it gets a lot easier to deal with. You feel a lot more comfortable in your skin. Maybe not based on like how much transitioning you do, but more just based on you living in your truth for an extended period of time. Definitely makes it easier.
I would agree with that. I would also add, when I first started transitioning, I thought I wanted all my changes to happen overnight because I saw all these people on social media whose changes were 3 months in, 6 months in, a year in, and I'm almost 2 years into my transition, and I don't have the same results that I thought I would have. My transition has definitely not been linear by any means. And I think the more I realize that, the more I appreciate the small changes that I notice. So yes, it does get easier, but it's not linear, like Blair said, and patience is key. Also, like Blair said, you're so smart.
Yeah, I think it's, transition for me is like 99% waiting. It feels that way, that you're always just waiting. You're always just waiting for the next milestone. You're waiting for the next, procedure, if you have procedures scheduled or planned in the future. At this point, looking back though, because now I'm about 2.5 years into the process, into medically transitioning. And, I kind of almost feel that I wish I would have enjoyed more of the moment that I was in. And it sounds crazy to say that because in the moment it was just so much frustration and so much anxiety around the process itself, but you will get there. And I think that's the takeaway I'm trying to get to here. It is a process, but you will get there one day at a time. We all do. We're all on the same journey together. Reach out to your allies, your friends, build your network of trans individuals you can connect with and be friends with and who you can relate with. But it does get easier. And it's almost wild now to look back at the start of my transition at some of the photos and just remember some of the feelings I felt then. And like Blair said before, you become just so much more comfortable in your skin and as you are. And eventually it just sort of fades into the background in a lot of ways. The dysphoria lessens over time. It's much more time between dysphoric episodes, if at all. And you sort of just settle down into your new normal and can move forward. There's a lot of work in between those two stages, but I think most of us do get there.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. I mean, I'm very achievement oriented. I've been, I think, addicted to achievement for most of my life, and I certainly apply that really heavily to my transition, particularly early on. So I was just trying to move as fast as I could, and I think that a lot of people feel that way, and especially when you're struggling with really strong emotions of dysphoria and discomfort in your body and whatever you're going through, it can feel very imperative, and it often is, to move at a certain pace. I mean, for your own health and safety, to be able to access some things. But then things often take time. Like Dakota was saying, HRT affects everybody's bodies differently, and it's so hard to not look on places like Instagram and Reddit and things and be like, oh, I thought I would be this, and this by now. And it's really hard to stay in the moment and be present with it. And especially, when you're pushing to move as fast as possible so that you one day feel all the relief. And, I can say I'm really, really happy and grateful with where I am now, but I still have really hard days, and there aren't, any other medical things or types of things like that on the horizon for me. I mean, I feel like I'm just coasting with where I'm at, and I'm living life, and I'm grateful to be there. But the hard days still come, and life still happens. And I don't necessarily think that everything has gotten magically better because of of, medical procedures or something like that. Like those things I chose, and they did help me in a lot of ways, but there are trans people that don't medically transition and don't do those things, and they still have to walk their path and find their comfort in their own bodies. And it's a process. And I think, I'm kind of a believer, and I don't know how cliche this sounds, but I don't necessarily think that everything one day gets better. I think, we as people like get better at the life part of it. You learn and you continue down your road and your story, and you deal with your struggles, and I'm trying to be more and more present in every day. Cause like Samantha was saying, I wish I could have had more presence back then. And maybe it wasn't going to be possible because things like the dysphoria I was feeling were really working against me staying present. But I have so much like love and admiration for the guy I was back then, who was fighting to be seen when the world really couldn't see me yet. Like that took so much strength, and that strength has built who I am today. And, I feel sometimes like I was just wishing past that person. But we're here and we're living. So yeah, it's crazy. Let's see. We do have another question from the live chat. This one is not for all of us. It is for Blair and Samantha specifically. This is who it calls out. I'm going to read it. And I want to preface that this question is written in all caps. I'm not going to like exclaim it like I feel like I should, but it says, how the heck is their hair so curly? Is it natural? Like, what the heck? Girls, would you like to explain?
My hair is definitely very naturally curly. I am Jewish, and so I think that has a factor to play here. But I also, when I was younger, would get buzz cuts all the time, and so I think it made my hair like thicker and a little bit more curly. So those are like the reasons that I think. Plus, I try to take good care of my hair. So yeah.
Yeah, my hair is definitely naturally curly. I had no idea it was curly when I first started growing it out. Before I transitioned, my hair was always very short. So when it started growing and it was starting to curl, I was like, okay, this is interesting. But it did take me a while to figure out how to actually tame it and make it look reasonable. So there's a whole routine behind it. There's the curly girl method for washing and caring for hair. There's a whole bunch of other tricks out there. And I do talk about it quite often on my Instagram page as well. But it is my natural curls, and I try my best to make them look presentable, but they don't always look presentable. Curls are kind of a hassle in a lot of ways.
They have a mind of their own.
They do.
They're lovely.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. I think that covers all of our viewer questions for tonight. So Dakota and Blair, if people want to follow the both of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Pretty much all my social media handles are Blurcher, BLURCHUR. Those are, I mean, Instagram is definitely probably the best place to reach me.
I am also going to say Instagram or Twitter. Becoming Dakota is my handle on both of those. Yeah, it's the best way to get a hold of me. Unless, yeah, that's the best way.
Or a nice letter.
Yeah, or an email. I like emails.
There you go. All right, Dakota and Blair, hang tight for just a moment here. We want to take a moment to talk about our next show. So Trans IRL is going to be off next week, but we will be returning on June 20th.
Yes, and our guest will be Chris Mosier. Chris is a triathlete and a transgender advocate. He's qualified for Team USA in the duathlon and triathlon and was instrumental in working with the International Olympic Committee to adopt new guidelines for transgender athletes. We'll be talking about his journey in transition and athletics, as well as his work supporting trans athletes. So we hope you will join us here in 2 weeks, the same time, same place. That's 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube and Facebook.
And as a reminder, if you'd like to get notifications when we go live, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Trans IRL. All of our past episodes are available there as well. We're also on Facebook as Trans IRL Show and Instagram as Trans IRL. So don't forget to like and follow us there as well. Well, this is a really great conversation. I really appreciate the two of you joining us here this week. Thanks so much for lending us some of your evening.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It was so fun to talk with both of you, and I'm just going to say it again. You're very, very cute, and I adore each of you so much.
Definitely. You're doing great things for the community out there. We hope to see a lot more from both of you online. But for now, from everyone here at Trans IRL, thanks for watching, and we'll see you live in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.